Most people say they want love, but what they actually fear is being alone. And in that fear, something subtle happens. They confuse love with attachment. Attachment feels intense. It feels urgent. It feels consuming. Love, on the other hand, is quiet, steady, and often misunderstood. Attachment says, I need you to feel whole. Love says, I am whole and I choose you. Tonight we are not here to judge ourselves. We are here to see clearly, because clarity is the beginning of freedom. Let's walk through the difference. Most people never stop to examine. Attachment is rooted in fear, while love is rooted in wholeness. This distinction sounds simple, yet it reaches into the deepest layers of the human psyche. Fear arises when a person feels divided within themselves, when an inner emptiness seeks an external solution. Attachment is born the moment someone believes that another human being is the answer to their incompleteness. Love, however, emerges only when that inner split begins to heal, when a person no longer looks outward to be saved but inward to become whole. Fear always moves in the same way. It tightens, clings, and demands certainty. When a person is attached, they are not responding to the other as they truly are. They are responding to what the other represents. The partner becomes a symbol of safety, validation, and survival. Silence becomes threatening. Distance feels like abandonment. Even small changes are interpreted as signs of loss. This is not because the other person has done something wrong, but because fear distorts perception. The attached mind is constantly scanning for danger, because deep down it believes that without the other, it will collapse. Many people mistake this anxiety for love because it feels intense. The heart races, the thoughts obsess, the emotions swing between hope and despair. But intensity is not depth. It is the nervous system reacting to perceived danger. A child who fears losing a parent clings desperately, not because the child loves deeply, but because separation feels like annihilation. In adulthood, this same pattern repeats in romantic relationships. The body remembers the fear even when the mind creates stories to justify it. What is called love is often a reenactment of an old wound seeking resolution. Wholeness moves differently. When a person has begun to integrate their inner fractures, they no longer approach another from hunger but from presence. Love does not arise from the need to be completed. It arises from the desire to share completeness. A whole person can stand alone without feeling empty, and precisely because of this, they can stand with another without fear. Love, then, is not a transaction or a rescue. It is a meeting. Fear says, stay, or I will fall apart. Wholeness says, stay if you choose, because I choose you too. One is a plea for survival. The other is an expression of freedom. In attachment, the other is unconsciously burdened with the task of holding together what has not yet been held within. This creates pressure, control, and eventually resentment. Love carries no such demand. It allows space because it trusts both the self and the other. A person rooted in fear often believes that love must hurt, that longing and anxiety are proof of depth. Yet true love is often quieter than expected. It does not constantly announce itself through suffering. It reveals itself in calm understanding, in the ability to tolerate uncertainty without panic, in the strength to let the other be fully themselves, even when that self does not revolve around us. Wholeness does not mean perfection. It does not mean the absence of wounds. It means awareness. It means recognizing that the fear of loss often has little to do with the present moment and much to do with unresolved parts of the past. When these parts are acknowledged rather than projected, the grip of attachment loosens. The other is no longer seen as a shield against loneliness, but as a companion walking alongside it. Love rooted in wholeness can endure change because it does not depend on control. It understands that nothing living can be frozen in time. People grow, circumstances shift, and certainty is an illusion. Fear resists this truth and suffers because of it. Love accepts impermanence and therefore remains alive. It does not cling to what was, but engages with what is. When someone loves from wholeness, they do not disappear when the other is absent. They remain themselves. They can miss without despair, desire without possession, and care without domination. This kind of love strengthens both individuals rather than consuming them. It does not demand sacrifice of the self to preserve the bond. Instead, it allows both selves to deepen. Many people spend years searching for the right person, believing that love will finally make them whole. But wholeness cannot be borrowed, it must be cultivated within. Only then does love stop being a desperate attempt to escape fear and become what it truly is, a conscious choice, made not out of lack but out of inner abundance. And when love arises from that place, it no longer chains two people together. It allows them to stand side by side, grounded, awake, and free. Attachment seeks control while love allows freedom. This difference is subtle, yet it shapes the fate of nearly every human relationship. Control arises when fear quietly takes the place of trust. When a person feels unsafe within themselves, they attempt to secure the outer world. Attachment is not content to simply experience connection. It must manage it, regulate it, and guard it against uncertainty. Love, however, moves in the opposite direction. It does not tighten its grip when fear appears. It loosens it, trusting that what is real does not need to be imprisoned to remain. The need for control is often misunderstood as care. A person asks questions, seeks reassurance, demands explanations, and monitors behavior, all while believing they are protecting the relationship. Yet beneath these actions lies an unspoken anxiety, the fear that if the other is free, they may choose differently. Control becomes a defense against this fear. It is an attempt to prevent loss before it happens. But what control truly protects is not love, but the fragile sense of security of the one who clings. In attachment, the other person slowly turns into an object to be managed, rather than a subject to be known. Their independence feels threatening. Their silence becomes suspicious. Their inner world is no longer respected as their own. This dynamic often develops unconsciously. Many people learned early in life that closeness could disappear without warning, and so they adapted by watching carefully, holding tightly, and never fully relaxing. What once helped them survive now governs how they love. Love cannot grow in a confined space. Freedom is not a luxury in love, it is its oxygen. When freedom is removed, affection turns into obligation and desire fades into duty. A relationship sustained by control may continue for a time, but it becomes heavy, tense, and quietly resentful. The controlled person feels unseen, while the controlling one feels perpetually anxious. Neither feels at peace. Freedom does not mean indifference. It does not mean a lack of commitment or care. It means recognizing that another human being is not an extension of oneself. Love that allows freedom understands that choice is meaningful only when it is voluntary. When someone stays because they are free to leave, their presence carries weight. When they stay because they are constrained, their presence loses its vitality. The paradox is that control often produces the very outcome it fears. The more tightly one grips, the more the other longs for escape. The relationship begins to revolve around resistance rather than connection. Love, when rooted in freedom, produces the opposite effect. When a person feels trusted and unconfined, they are more likely to remain not out of fear but out of genuine attachment that is healthy and alive. There is a deep psychological truth hidden here. One cannot control another without losing contact with oneself. The energy spent monitoring, worrying, and managing could have been used to deepen self-understanding. Attachment keeps attention outward, constantly adjusting the other in hopes of feeling safe. Love turns attention inward, asking, "What within me is afraid?" This question opens the door to growth. Freedom in love requires courage. It demands the willingness to face uncertainty without collapsing. It asks a person to tolerate the discomfort of not knowing, of not possessing guarantees. This is difficult because it confronts an ancient fear, the fear of being alone. Yet it is only by facing this fear that love can mature. When someone knows they can survive loss, they no longer need to control to prevent it. A relationship rooted in freedom is not chaotic or careless. It is structured by mutual respect rather than surveillance. Boundaries exist, but they are self-chosen, not enforced through fear. Communication flows because it is safe, not because it is demanded. In such a space, growth is not a threat, it is shared. When love allows freedom, both individuals are invited to become more of who they truly are. There is room for solitude, exploration, and change. The bond does not depend on sameness or constant closeness. It is strengthened by trust. This trust is not blind optimism, but a quiet confidence in oneself and in the other. Attachment seeks to own because it believes ownership equals security. Love allows freedom because it understands that security comes from within. And when love is no longer tasked with protecting the ego from fear, it reveals its true nature, not a cage, not a contract, but a living connection between two free and conscious beings, choosing each other without force, without fear, and without chains. Attachment often confuses intensity with depth, mistaking emotional turbulence for intimacy and urgency for meaning. It thrives in extremes. in the sudden rush of closeness and the equally sudden fear of loss. Love, by contrast, grows quietly. It does not announce itself through drama, nor does it demand constant stimulation to prove its existence. This difference is rarely understood because intensity is loud and quiet growth is easy to overlook. Intensity captures attention because it overwhelms the senses. The heart races, thoughts fixate, emotions swing wildly between hope and despair. These experiences feel profound, and so they are often interpreted as signs of deep connection. Yet intensity is frequently a reaction, not a bond. It is the psyche responding to uncertainty, to unresolved longing, or to the threat of separation. Attachment feeds on this emotional charge because it gives the illusion of closeness even when true understanding is absent. Many relationships begin in this state of heightened intensity. Two people meet, projections ignite, and each sees in the other a reflection of their unmet needs. Every interaction feels charged with meaning. A delayed message brings anxiety. A brief reassurance brings relief. The relationship becomes a cycle of tension and release. This pattern is not sustained by intimacy, but by the nervous system's need to regulate itself through the presence of another. What feels like passion is often dependency wearing an attractive mask. Depth does not behave this way. Depth unfolds slowly, through repeated experiences of safety and consistency. It requires time, patience, and a willingness to remain present, even when nothing dramatic is happening. Love that grows quietly does not rely on emotional highs to feel alive. It is found in ordinary moments, shared silence, mutual understanding, the ability to sit together without needing to impress or perform. Attachment struggles with these moments. When intensity fades, fear emerges. The attached mind interprets calm as boredom, stability as stagnation. It seeks stimulation to recreate the original emotional surge. Arguments, jealousy, and emotional crises become substitutes for intimacy because they restore the familiar sense of urgency. This is why some relationships feel most alive during conflict and strangely empty during peace. The depth was never there, only intensity was. Quiet love, on the other hand, deepens beneath the surface. It is not always exciting, but it is nourishing. It allows two people to reveal themselves gradually without pressure. Trust builds not through dramatic declarations, but through reliability. Over time, a sense of emotional safety forms, and within that safety, vulnerability becomes possible. This is where true intimacy begins. The confusion between intensity and depth often originates early in life. When emotional availability was inconsistent, closeness became unpredictable. Love felt intense because it was unstable. The psyche learned to associate emotional arousal with connect. Ion. Later, calm relationships feel unfamiliar, even unsettling. The absence of intensity is mistaken for the absence of love. Yet what is truly missing is chaos, not connection. Love that grows quietly does not depend on constant validation. It does not need to be proven again and again through dramatic gestures. Its strength lies in continuity. Even in silence, it remains present. Even in routine, it retains meaning. This kind of love can withstand time because it is not fueled by excitement alone, but by understanding and mutual respect. There is a certain maturity required to recognize quiet love. It asks a person to listen more deeply, to sense what is steady rather than what is loud. It invites patience in a culture that glorifies urgency. Quiet love teaches that depth is not measured by how strongly one feels in a moment, but by how consistently one shows up over time. When two people move beyond attachment, they stop chasing intensity and begin cultivating presence. They allow the relationship to breathe. They accept that not every moment will be charged, and that this is not a loss, but a sign of stability. In this space, love becomes less about emotional fireworks and more about shared reality. The paradox is that quiet love, though less dramatic, is far more transformative. It changes the way a person relates not only to others, but to themselves. It brings a sense of inner calm that intensity never provides. Where attachment exhausts, love restores. Where intensity consumes, depth sustains. To love quietly is not to love weakly. It is to love with roots instead of flames. Flames burn bright and disappear. Roots grow unseen and hold firm. When love is aloe, wed to grow quietly, it becomes something that does not need to be proven, defended, or dramatized. It simply is, steady, enduring, and deeply real. Attachment seeks completion, while love seeks connection. This distinction lies at the heart of many silent struggles in human relationships. When a person feels incomplete within themselves, they search outward for what they believe is missing. Another human being becomes the vessel into which they pour their unmet needs, unresolved wounds, and unfulfilled longings. Attachment is not primarily about knowing the other. It is about using the other to fill an inner absence. Love begins where this search for completion ends. The feeling of incompleteness often forms early, when parts of the self were ignored, rejected, or left unseen. Over time, this absence becomes a quiet ache, one that is difficult to name. In adulthood, it disguises itself as romantic longing. The mind says, "I have finally found the one," but beneath this belief is a deeper hope that, through this bond, the emptiness will disappear. The partner is unconsciously assigned the task of making life feel whole, meaningful, and secure. This burden is heavy, even when it is not spoken. The attached person becomes highly sensitive to the other's moods and availability. Every withdrawal feels like a personal failure. Every moment of distance reactivates the fear of being unfinished and unlovable. In this state, love turns into a constant effort to hold on to the source of completion. The relationship revolves around maintenance rather than mutual discovery. Love does not operate from this place. Love does not ask another to supply what has not been developed within. It arises when a person has begun to recognize and integrate their own inner parts, even the wounded ones. Wholeness is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to contain it without demanding that someone else erase it. From this place, connection becomes possible, not as a remedy but as a meeting. Connection is different from completion because it honors separateness. Two individuals stand in their own integrity and choose to relate, not to escape themselves, but to share themselves. Love seeks to know rather than to use. It listens, observes, and responds without the urgency to fix or possess. In connection, the other is not an answer to a problem, but a presence to be encountered. When attachment seeks completion, it often creates dependency. The attached person may feel lost without the relationship, unsure of who they are or what they want. Their sense of identity becomes entangled with the other. Decisions are shaped by fear of losing the bond rather than by inner truth. This dependency can feel like devotion, but it is fueled by anxiety. It restricts growth because growth threatens the fragile sense of completion. Love that seeks connection supports growth. It does not require sameness or constant closeness to feel secure. It allows each person to evolve, trusting that change does not automatically mean loss. In this kind of love, individuality is not a threat but a contribution. Each person brings their own inner world, and through connection, these worlds touch without collapsing into one another. There is a quiet dignity in connection that attachment cannot tolerate. Attachment wants to be everything to the other because it fears being nothing. Love accepts that it cannot and should not fulfill every need. It recognizes that no single relationship can replace a person's inner work, purpose, or sense of meaning. This acceptance creates space for honesty and balance. Many people experience disappointment in love, not because love fails them, but because they ask it to do what it cannot. They seek completion through another, only to discover that the emptiness remains. This realization can feel devastating, yet it carries an important invitation to turn inward. When a person begins to cultivate their own inner life, relationships shift naturally. They become less desperate, more grounded, and more real. Connection thrives in this groundedness. It allows affection to flow without fear of collapse. It transforms love from a need into a choice. When love is chosen rather than required, it becomes lighter yet stronger. It is no longer driven by the question, "Who will make me whole?" but by the question, "Who can I truly meet?" To move from attachment to love is to move from hunger to presence. It is to stop demanding completion from the outside and begin offering connection from within. In doing so, relationships are freed from impossible expectations and become what they were always meant to be. Not a solution to emptiness, but a shared experience of being fully, consciously alive together. Attachment fears loss, while love accepts impermanence. This single contrast reveals why so many relationships are lived in quiet anxiety rather than deep peace. Fear of loss does not begin in the present moment. It is carried forward from earlier experiences where separation felt unbearable. When attachment governs the heart, love becomes a fragile structure that must be constantly protected from collapse. Every change is treated as a threat, every distance as a warning. and every silence as the beginning of an end. Attachment believes that losing the other would mean losing the self. The bond becomes intertwined with identity, purpose, and emotional survival. In this state, love is no longer an exchange between two individuals but a lifeline. The thought of impermanence is unbearable, so it is resisted. Promises are demanded, certainty is sought, and the future is tightly imagined in an attempt to control it. Yet the more attachment struggles against change, the more suffering it creates. Loss feels terrifying because it awakens an old fear, the fear of abandonment, of being left alone with unresolved emptiness. Many people do not fear the actual departure of the other as much as they fear what it will awaken inside them. Attachment attempts to prevent this confrontation by holding on, by preserving what is familiar, even when it has already begun to change. In doing so, it traps both people in a relationship shaped by anxiety rather than vitality. Love relates to loss differently. Love does not deny impermanence. It recognizes it as an essential condition of life. Everything that lives is subject to change, and everything that is formed will eventually dissolve. Love does not attempt to escape this truth. Instead, it deepens in the presence of it. When one understands that nothing can be owned forever, each moment of connection gains meaning. Love becomes an act of presence rather than possession. Accepting impermanence does not mean indifference. It does not mean loving less deeply. In fact, it allows love to become more sincere. When a person loves without the illusion of permanence, they stop clinging to what might be lost and begin honoring what exists now. The other is not treated as a guarantee, but as a living being whose presence is continually chosen. Attachment, by contrast, clings to the idea of forever. As a defense against fear, it believes that permanence can be secured through commitment, control, or sacrifice. But permanence cannot be forced. Relationships that attempt to deny change often become rigid and brittle. They survive in form but lose their spirit. Love that accepts impermanence remains flexible, able to adapt as life unfolds. There is a quiet strength in accepting that love may change or even end. This acceptance does not weaken bonds, it purifies them. When someone knows they can survive loss, they no longer need to guard against it at all costs. Fear loosens its grip, and trust has room to grow. Love becomes less about avoiding pain and more about shared experience. Many people stay in relationships long after love has faded because attachment fears the emptiness that might follow. Yet emptiness is not the enemy. It is a space in which new understanding can emerge. When loss is faced rather than avoided, it reveals inner resources that attachment never allowed to develop. Love that accepts impermanence is rooted in this inner resilience. To love in this way requires maturity. It asks a person to stand in the reality that nothing external can guarantee lasting security. True security arises from within, from the knowledge that one can endure change without losing oneself. When this knowledge is present, love is no longer burdened with the impossible task of providing eternal certainty. Impermanence does not diminish love, it gives it depth. The awareness that moments are fleeting encourages attention, care, and sincerity. Words are spoken with intention, time is valued, presence becomes sacred. Love lived under the illusion of permanence often becomes careless, assuming that there will always be more time later. When love accepts impermanence, it does not mean anticipating loss with sadness. It means meeting life honestly. It means loving fully without demanding guarantees. In this honesty, love finds freedom. It is no longer haunted by the fear of endings because it is no longer dependent on avoiding them. It remains open, alive, and grounded in reality. Attachment fears loss because it has not yet learned to trust life. Love accepts impermanence because it understands that life moves through cycles of meeting and parting, holding and releasing. To love without fear is not to deny loss, but to recognize that even in loss, life continues, meaning endures, and the capacity to love remains. If you feel anxious in love, it does not mean you are broken. It means there is a part of you asking to be seen, healed, and strengthened. The more you become whole within yourself, the less you will confuse attachment for love. Love is not a cage. Love is not a contract written in fear. Love is the meeting of two free beings who choose each other again and again. And the moment you understand this, you stop begging for love. You become capable of it.